listener production.
Hello, Natarsha Belling with you, and welcome to the afternoon edition of The Briefing. Coming up in our deep dive, the surprising Australian connection to the assassination of US President John F. Kennedy. The bombshell link has been revealed in new top-secret papers that have just been unlocked by the Trump administration. But first, let's check the afternoon headlines this Wednesday, the 19th of March. It's official. NASA astronauts Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore are now back safely on Earth after 9 months in space. In a highly coordinated mission, the pair landed in a SpaceX Dragon shuttle in the ocean off Florida, greeted by cheers from Mission Control.
Copy, splashdown. We see main chutes cut. Nick, Alex, Butch, Sonny, on behalf of SpaceX, welcome home.
The astronauts were out of their capsule, waving and smiling at cameras within an hour of landing. Now they head straight to NASA in Texas for their post-mission checkup. But the 9 months in space will have a major impact on the astronauts' health. Here's Professor Alan Duffy from Swinburne University on Channel 7.
Yeah, so every month in space, they lose about a percentage of their bone density. That means by the time this 9 months was over, they've lost something in the region 10 to 15%. That's equivalent to around 7 years of aging for an elderly individual. So, this is a long and painful road ahead.
2 ex-nurses charged over an alleged video threatening Israeli patients are fighting to get the footage thrown out of court. The clip posted by Israeli social media figure Max Vifa led to charges against Sarah Abu Lebda and Ahmed Rashad Nadir. Their lawyers argue the video was recorded without consent and want it excluded from evidence. Both nurses have lost their nursing registration and they'll be back in court in May. And a fascinating Australian link to the assassination of US President John F. Kennedy has been uncovered after secret documents were released by the Trump administration. A number of phone calls were reportedly made to the US Embassy in Canberra about a plot to kill JFK before he was assassinated in November 1963. The declassified files also reveal Australia's top spy agency, ASIO, had requested to keep the calls and subsequent investigation secret. Now it's time to get into our deep dive with Foreign Affairs expert Dr. Keith Suter. Today we're exploring these newly released top secret files on the assassination of John F. Kennedy. We'll chat about the new evidence and exactly what it means, also the Aussie connection, and whether we will ever solve one of the world's greatest mysteries: who shot JFK? Keith, thanks so much for joining us. So much to unpack with these new secret files being released. Can we start with why these top secret documents that have been secret for decades are now being released?
Yeah, so it goes back over 30 years when there was a movie made about the assassination of President Kennedy in November 1963, and Congress passed a law saying that all the documents relating to the assassination should be made available to the public because there was still widespread suspicion as to what exactly happened in the assassination. And then presidents were very slow to force the bureaucracy to publicise the files. Donald Trump 8 years ago promised that he would get them all into the public domain, but failed to honour that. Joe Biden didn't even try very much. And now more recently, Donald Trump has reaffirmed his decision to get them all into the public domain. And that is what is occurring as we speak at the moment. There are 80,000 files. We thought there were 3,500. 80,000 are being uploaded. It's going to bring down the archives website, I think, as people try to work their way through all the material that's going to be released.
Okay, so there's so much to develop with this story. As you mentioned before, 80,000 files. It will take some time to work out exactly what is new in these secret documents. What do we know so far?
Well, we know that the official version is wrong. So the official version back in 1963 is that Lee Harvey Oswald was acting alone and shot President Kennedy. We never found out the motive for his deciding to do that. Now, that was the official explanation. Over the decades, more and more people have been suspicious, almost really from the very beginning, because there were people who said that they were on that grassy knoll, for example, and they could hear the bullets whiz past them. So in other words, that Lee Harvey Oswald was in one building, well away from where other people heard shots being fired behind them. And so right from the very beginning, people did not believe the lone shooter story. And so that has now been reaffirmed by the publication of material from the doctors who operated on President Kennedy at the Dallas hospital. They could see that there was more than one wound to the president. And also, eventually, the film of the president getting shot was made available, particularly one frame that was missing, which showed that the bullet was going into the front of his head and not the back of it. It's a pretty awful thing, but you can get it. It's called the Zapruder file. So we know, first of all, that Lee Harvey Oswald did not act alone and may not even have been the shooter anyway, because there's some doubt about the quality of the rifle that he used to do that. Secondly, CIA at the time, 1963, said they knew nothing about Lee Harvey Oswald, and we now know that they were opening his mail for 4 years before the assassination. So they did know quite a bit about Lee Harvey Oswald.
So, Keith, in regards to this new information coming to light, there were reports there is quite an interesting Australian connection regarding someone reporting that they had heard plans about some type of assassination plot to kill John F. Kennedy, and that was passed on to the authorities in the US, and ASIO was aware of it, Australia's Security Intelligence Office. Can you explain more details about this Australian connection, which has just come to light when these files have been released?
Yeah, so it's coming to light now, and ASIO had said to CIA, don't make that material available. Now, we're not sure exactly what that material is. Was it a particular individual who had contacts in the United States? And if so, who were those contacts? Mafia or other parts of the intelligence agency or whatever? We just don't know. So the allegation is that ASIO had heard of reports prior to the assassination and immediately right after the assassination, and they wanted to keep that information secret, and it has remained secret until the last few hours when it's now been revealed. But we still don't know exactly what the background of that information was. Who did it come from? Where was the call placed, etc. So there's still yet more digging to be done.
There are allegations or speculation, though, Keith, that with this Australian connection, they were pointing to the alleged involvement of Russia in this assassination plot. Do you think there's any merit to that?
Probably not. The Russians have published their documents. Remember, intelligence agencies, if they've got any sense, will not leave a smoking gun in the file, so to speak. So if the Russians were behind this, then that would have been revealed by now. And it's not clear that the Russians did do that because it was certainly not of their benefit. Remember, in June of that year, so the assassination was November, in June of that year, President Kennedy had spoken about the need for disarmament. So he was actually improving relations with the Russians. So if anybody wanted him to stay alive, it would have been the Russians because he was promising to end the Cold War. So I think that the Russian connection will be very weak indeed.
So, Keith, in regards to the timing of these release of documents, there is a lot, as you very well know, as a foreign affairs expert, a lot going on in the world right now. Do you think the timing of the release of these documents, is very interesting, considering there could be a school of thought that it's distraction from what's really going on in the world at the moment?
Well, obviously, there are always distractions. I think that really it's President Trump honouring an election promise, and good on him. He's standing up to the deep state, and he's saying, look, I want those documents in the public domain. I'm not expecting some dramatic big breakthrough, identifying CIA agents who might have assassinated the president or would go on to assassinate Robert Kennedy or Martin Luther King. I don't think we're going to get any of that information, but it does show Trump is willing to stand up to, this time around, the deep state in a way that he was unwilling to do so 8 years ago, and a way that the Biden would never even think about trying to do so. So I think it reflects the strength of Trump's feeling about how he wants to try to control the US government. But I don't see it as a distraction, no.
And Keith, in regards to looking at exactly what happened to the former US President JFK, it is one of the greatest mysteries in modern time where there has been no clear evidence exactly who was responsible for the assassination of that sitting US President, JFK, in 1963. What do you believe happened at that stage?
I have no idea. The more I learn, the less I understand, I think is the way that I would put it. Clearly, the Lee Harvey Oswald theory does not hold water, so we need to find out. And there are a number of suspects. Could have been the mafia, could have been a rogue element within CIA, could have been something completely different that we haven't even thought about yet. That's why we want to get as much information as possible in the public domain and with as many people as possible reading those documents, because people will look at those documents differently and interpret them and have their own information when they come to doing that interpretation. But you're right, it remains one of the great unexplained mysteries that somebody gets shot in broad daylight with plenty of witnesses, and we still don't have, after all these years, 60-odd years, we still don't have a good explanation of what happened.
80,000 pages, documents, however you want to phrase it, being released. You know, there was speculation this could answer some of those age-old questions that have remained a mystery for decades. Do you think we'll learn any more, or you think that this will always remain a great mystery?
I think there will always be an element of mystery here because there are so many other weird coincidences. We've still got the unexplained death of Kennedy's mistress in Washington, D.C., around the time that the official report was about to be produced blaming Lee Harvey Oswald. She would have been, we assume, a skeptic, and she was murdered, and that murder remains unexplained as well. So there are a number of people who died of various circumstances associated with the assassination. So there are just so many mysteries surrounding this core mystery, if you like. You know, other people have just died in mysterious accidents, etc. It remains a really big, mysterious event. And I think that conspiracy theories will just continue to develop.
Keith, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
That was Foreign Affairs expert Dr. Keith Suter. And that's it for this episode of the afternoon edition of The Briefing. We'd love you to subscribe or follow us so you don't miss our episodes or our deep dive of the day. You can also follow us on our socials, on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast, and on TikTok and YouTube. You just need to search Listener Newsroom. That's spelled LISTNR. And we'll be back in your feed tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. I'm Natarsha Belling. Thanks for your company. See you tomorrow.